everyone, Hobbyist here. We are back at again with another Nemesis guide. This time we're going to actually be talking about the specifics of the rooms inside of Nemesis. Inside of the tutorial, we've kind of mentioned the main ideas of the rooms and why you would use them, but what about all of the specifics as far as what they do in those rules? Well, this is what this video is about. So, all of these rooms here that you see in front of you, from the emergency room all the way to the fire control system, maybe a little bit of the armory that you could see on screen, are all of the basic room 1 tiles inside of Nemesis. Now, the way that basic 1 rooms work, regardless of what play session you might be in or anything like that, all of these rooms are always going to be on the ship. It's just a matter of finding out where they are, because their location is going to move and switch every single time. But all these rooms are always going to be there. All of these rooms, 90% of the time, have something to do with a direct objective inside of Nemesis, and are the means of which you could do so. So, let's kind of go a little bit, starting from the top, and we're going to work our way all the way down to all of the rooms, what all exactly they do, and things of that nature. So the first room that we're going to talk about is a pretty simple room. It's the emergency room. It's a green room inside of Nemesis, so whenever you have the ability to search inside of this room, you'll be picking green medical items for as far as your selection goes. All that it is that you see the number at the top left means that that is the number of cards it takes to use that room action. Now, the room action inside of the emergency room isn't actually a room where it matters whether you're in combat or not. You can actually use this at either time. And all that the emergency room does is that it treats your wounds. You can either dress all of your serious wounds that you have, really nice, especially if you get like bleed and other combinations, or heal one of your dress serious wounds that you already have dressed from other medical items, or heal all of your light wounds. This is going to be the place to go if you've been struggling all game to make sure that you're, not on the close of dying. So that is all of the specifics as far as the emergency room goes. It doesn't serve any other function aside from healing you up and making sure that you have a greater chance of surviving. These two rooms are the evacuation sections that exist inside of Nemesis, both A and B. For the sakes of this video, I'm going to combine them both into one, since they both essentially do the same thing, just for different sides of the ship. They're both white rooms, so if you ever search any of these rooms, you get to pick which deck that you want to draw from, whether it be the yellow technical deck, the red military deck, or the green medical deck. It's up to you. You get to pick any one of those. And the way that it works is that all of these evacuation sections are non-combat only. You can't have an intruder in either one of these rooms when you are trying to enter through the escape pod. Of course, you've got to make sure that the escape pods are unlocked, which happens on the first character's death, if the self-destruct track reaches a certain point, or if you have items that manually unlock either of the escape pods. So the way that it works in order to escape is that it costs you 2 cards, as you can see up here up top. And what you have to do, key thing, remember there's no intruders need to be in the room whenever you're doing this, is that you have to attempt a noise roll. If you get an encounter, then you fail to escape. If you resolve the noise roll and no intruders showed up, there were no intruders in the room to begin with, then you have successfully entered from the evacuation section into an escape pod. From that point afterwards, if you have the ability to then decide whether you are going to stay on the ship, maybe you want to wait for somebody to jump with you inside of escape pods, since escape pods take 2 people, or what you could do to kind of keep yourself safe is you could just launch out of your escape pod. All escape pods inside of Nemesis are always going to Earth, so you don't have to worry about any destinations or anything like that, as you would on side of the ship itself. So you're guaranteed to go straight to Earth. It's just a matter of making sure that you completed your objective and surviving. So that's how escaping through this method works. So the generator room is the next room that we're going to talk about. That is a basic room 1. So it's a room that always exists on the ship. It's just a matter of where is it this time. So a couple key things that you want to know about the generator is that it is a anytime room action. So you can activate the self-destruct regardless of whether or not an intruder is in the room or not. You can always do that, as long as the room is functioning, of course. But the key thing that you'll want to notice is that it's a yellow room, so if you perform a search action, you can search through the items of the technical deck in order to be able to successfully get your cards. However, the other thing that you're going to want to see is that you see this blue logo that's right here? That means that this room contains a computer. There are characters across the entirety of Nemesis that have abilities that pertain to rooms with computers. So you guys can do all of those actions that relate to that if you see this icon. Otherwise, it's going to just simply cost you 2 cards to use the generator room, and you can either start or stop the self-destruct sequence. The way that the self-destruct works is that across the time track, you will actually see a shorter track that exists that's self-destruct. And the way that it works is that whenever it is started, then each time that the event phase begins, every time that you move the time track, just for the regular ship, you would then also move the self-destruct track at the same time. If it reaches any yellow space, then all of the escape pods open and there is no way to undo the self-destruct sequence. Once it reaches that last red space, if you are still on the ship, whether you're hibernating or not, the ship is going to then explode and kill everything on board. The only safe way from this explosion is, of course, if you manage to escape in an escape pod. The key thing with the generator room, though, is that you can't start the self-destruct sequence if any of the characters are already hibernating. That is going to be really, 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 really important, as that is going to help determine how you're trying to destroy the ship. So if everybody has already fixed all the engines that they needed to, if everybody has made sure that from the cockpit that the ship is in fact headed to Earth, and they go inside the hibernatorium, then that becomes an issue, because then you can't really use the generator room because of the way that it is. However, the key thing to note is that there's only 6 rounds of the self-destruct track before it goes off, whereas it is 15 rounds inside of just the normal time track. If the self-destruct sequence was activated, let's say 3 rounds before the game ends, and the ship jumped into hyperspace, because the self-destruct track was still going, the ship would still be counted as destroyed at the end of the game. So if your objective is to destroy the ship, destroy the nest, or anything like that, then you would have successfully completed your objective in that case. So that is something important to keep in mind. So this next room we got a storage room. So the storage room, as you can see, does not have a computer like the last room did. It costs 2 action cards, and you can pretty much use this regardless of whether you are or are not in combat. The way that it works is that you can essentially just perform a search action inside of the room, but even though you see that the storage room is a red room, and normally the color matches whenever you do the search, when you're paying the 2 cards, you treat the storage room as a white room, meaning that nothing ticks down, it doesn't count as an additional search, and you could basically search for anything that's in red, green, or yellow. You perform the search as normal, as in you draw 2 cards from that deck, you pick one, and then you discard the other to the bottom of the deck, but you essentially treat it as another white room, which is honestly really good, because it gives you a lot more options. Even if the item counter is set to 0, you can still keep using storage, and as long as you have cards, you can keep searching and searching and searching and searching and searching. for the whole game if you really wanted to. So storage is a great place to get items if you are struggling to get your search cards or anything of that manner. Surgery is the next room that we're going to be talking about, and it is also a room 1 tile that always exists on the ship. It's just a matter of where is it located this time. The way that it works is that it is a green room, so whenever you perform the search action inside of this room, you are able to search the green medical item deck in order to be able to take your cards with whatever you see fit. It is also a card where you can use this room action regardless of whether you are or aren't in combat. And simply, you just pay the 2 cards as you can see up top. As for every room inside of Nemesis, costs you 2 cards. And perform a surgery procedure. The way that the surgery procedure works is that you get to scan all of your contamination cards first. Whether they be from your action deck, whether they're from your hand, or from your discard pile, if you recently got them or what have you. Any of the cards that you scan that say infected get immediately removed from the game. If you had a larva on your character board, remove it. After scanning, then your character suffers a light wound and you automatically pass, because obviously you get a little wounded from, you just went through a whole surgery procedure. They cut you open and stuff. So that is the whole other part of it. The other key thing about the surgery is that you will always end up with no cards in your hand at the end of every surgery procedure. Because what will end up happening is that when you pass, all the cards that are in your hand and that are in your discard pile are going to be immediately shuffled into a brand new deck and be placed off to the side. You won't be able to draw back up, of course, until the beginning of the next player phase. So this is a great way in order to get larva and contamination cards. Remember, only for infected cards will it get rid of. If you manage to get contamination cards that say uninfected, they're still going to clutter up your hand because they're not going to go away. But at the very least, it won't kill you. The fire control system is the next room that we're going to talk about. And it is also a yellow room. So whenever you perform the search action inside of this room, you are able to then search inside of the yellow item technical deck. The other key thing that we talked about, much like the generator, is that this blue logo indicates that it is a room with a computer. And action cards that relate to rooms with computers can be used as such. Now, what the fire control system does is that it initiates the fire control procedure. And the way that it works is that the fire control system allows you to discard a fire marker in any room. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where it was, is just long as that there's a fire in that room. You can then discard a fire marker. If there is no fire in that room, then you can also use it for a secondary purpose. So aside from putting out fire on the ship, which is always great, you have the ability to use the fire control procedure on any room with intruders in it and cause all the intruders in that room to retreat. Which is really nice. It allows you to control it a little bit. So, a little bit more on the retreating aspect, go back up top to our tutorial to learn more about retreating. The Armory is the next room that we're going to be talking about, and the Armory is pretty self-explanatory as far as what it does. It's a red room, so whenever you perform the search action in there, you'll be able to search for red items. Whenever you pay to do the room action, you will have the ability to recharge your energy weapon. All that it essentially means is that for the energy weapon that you have, you'll be able to add 2 ammo tokens to one of your energy weapons. The key thing is that this room action does not reload classic weapons, as you will later see, nor does it allow a weapon to hold more ammo than it already has. So if you see an ammo 5 or an ammo 4 on a weapon, or even as low as an ammo 2, it can only load up to that max amount. So that is something to really keep in mind. The next room that we're going to be talking about is kind of a big one, and that is the laboratory. And the way that the laboratory works is that it is a green room, so you are able to search it, if possible, and be able to get medical items from that deck. It also is a room with a computer for any characters who have abilities that pertain to rooms with computers, so that is quite important. And it is also a room to where it doesn't matter regardless of whether you are or aren't in combat. So you can use this room action if you have the cards and the materials to do so. And you basically are allowed to analyze one object. Objects inside of Nemesis consist of the intruder eggs, the character corpses, and the intruder carcasses. This is the room where you're going to be finding all of your intruder weaknesses. And the way that they work, even though I don't have the cards in front of me here, is that whichever one that you have analyzed, that you are carrying, you are going to then flip over the intruder weakness card that corresponds with that. So let's look a little closer at the board. So right here, as you can see, all of the ones that say character corpse, intruder egg, and intruder carcass. At the beginning of the game, when we set up, we had randomly laid those 3 weaknesses over these areas. But when you are inside a laboratory and you scan those weaknesses, you'll be able to flip that weakness card face up. And then from that point forward, for everybody else involved, that intruder weakness is a permanent effect that affects the intruders for the rest of the game. The next room that we're going to be talking about is the nest. It is a basic room 1 tile that exists just like the others, in the fact that it is always on the ship. It's just a matter of where is it located. This is the central home of all intruders inside of Nemesis. Whether you are playing base game Nemesis or Lockdown, or if you are against the Void Seeders, the Carnomorphs, or the Chitrits, even the Night Stalkers too, this room always exists. The way that it works, and some of the key things that you're going to notice, that it functions quite differently from the rest of the other rooms on Nemesis. The reason being is that the nest cannot be malfunctioning, because it's not a functioning room that exists. But it can suffer any other status effect inside of Nemesis, whether it be through fire, silence, danger, slime, things of that nature. So, something that you'll notice is that it doesn't have a computer in it, obviously. It's literally the nest. But what exactly does it do? For the cost of 2 actions, like every room inside a Nemesis, you have the ability to take an egg from the nest. While you have the ability to do this, it also presents you a second option. You can either destroy eggs inside the nest as well. In order to take an egg from the nest, once you play those 2 cards, you're going to be taking an egg from the intruder board. At the beginning of the game, regardless of what alien species that you're facing, whether it is just the basic intruders, if it's the Night Stalkers, whether it's the Carnomorphs, the Void Seeders, the Chitrits, all of the intruder boards for those respective species are going to start with 5 eggs inside of them. Over the course of the bag development phase, there might be eggs added to the nest, or there might be certain events that take away from the nest. Whenever you are taking an egg from the nest, simply just grab the egg token and put it inside of your hand slot on your character board. Because the aliens can sense that you have done something with their babies, however, the aliens are not going to be very happy with you taking eggs. Therefore, each time that you take an egg inside of Nemesis, you have to perform a noise roll afterwards. Because they're going to be scurrying through the nest and being like, who did that? Who messed with our young? Who messed with the babies? And you might get a surprise attack from that. It's entirely possible. So, that's just something that's going to be really important. So, just as a recap, for just taking an egg, it's going to cost you 2 action cards, and you just take the egg from the intruder board, and you perform a noise roll after that. But now, let's talk about destroying eggs. Using the cost of 2 action cards, you could decide, instead of taking an egg for either research purposes or for completing your objective, you could decide to destroy the eggs because, hey, you don't want any more inside the nest, you don't want anybody else to get them, or things of that nature. Whatever you do is that when you're in a room with any uncarried eggs, not carried by a character, you could try to destroy the eggs. You resolve this action by either using a shoot action or a melee attack action. And each injury of any type, it's essentially treated like a larva, destroys an egg. So anything on the combat die, obviously except for a blank, will destroy an egg. If you do a melee attack, let's say you don't have any ammo, you don't have to do any contamination cards or suffer any serious wounds because it's an egg. It's just gonna sit there. If you missed, you missed. It's not gonna fight back. The other thing that you'll want to know as far as items and how they affect the nest inside of Nemesis is that you can throw a grenade into the room with uncarried nests as if an intruder were in there. A grenade destroys 2 eggs, whereas a Molotov cocktail destroys 1 egg. After every single attempt to destroy an egg, you have to perform a noise roll. Because, hey, again, you're making the intruders pretty angry with what you're doing. And if you aren't careful, there is one more area where the nest also plays an effect. During the event phase, you happen to be in the nest. This is where things start to become a bit of a problem. Aside from whether you've been taking eggs for yourself, either to fulfill your objective or discover an intruder weakness, or if you've been casually destroying eggs, making sure nobody else can get to them, one of the risks that runs is that if you pull the queen token and you are in the nest room, then she is not going to be one happy camper with you messing with all of her young. So she is going to show up as an encounter inside the nest room. So that is going to be really, really, really important to make sure that even though you might be doing stuff inside the nest, don't hang out in the nest for very long. Just a bit of information regarding the nest inside of Nemesis is that while it is a place where the queen is likely to spawn, where you have the ability to either take an egg from the nest or destroy an egg inside of the nest, there's also one more function that the nest has. If the nest is on fire, like you see here, during the fire damage step inside of the event phase, as long as there is fire there, you are going to destroy 1 egg every single event phase. So, on the first event phase, when the nest is full, it'll take away down to 4, and then it'll go down to 3, and then it'll go down to 2, and then it'll go down to 1. If you decide to destroy the nest, either yourself, risking noise rolls, or through this passive way of fire, and the last egg is taken out of the nest is considered destroyed. There's nothing else to get. To mark this, all you do is you place a red damage marker in the nest room to signal to every other player that the nest has been destroyed and that there is nothing there to collect. It serves no function. The only thing that it can do at this point is during intruder bag development, potentially spawn the queen on top of you if anybody else is in there. But otherwise, it does nothing else. The comm room is kind of self-explanatory. It is essentially the yellow room where if you perform a search action in it, you'll be able to search inside of the yellow items inside of the technical deck. It also has the purpose of being a room that has a computer in it. For any characters that have rooms that involve computers, you are able to do so from the comm room. Pretty much at that point, all you could do is that you send the signal with the cost of 2 cards. You could do this whether you are in or not in combat. And all it does is just it fills up the status marker that's on the signal space on your character board. All it literally serves the purpose of doing is making sure that you send the signal to complete your objective, if that's part of your objective. So that's where you get that. Is all of the room 1s that exist inside of Nemesis. So if you were never sure about whether any of these rooms, if you remember any of the rules or anything like that, constantly reference the basic room sheets. That way you have the easier time of knowing what exactly the rooms do. And just remember, all the room 1s always exist on the ship. They're going to be somewhere and are going to rotate and move every time you set up a game of Nemesis, but they all serve the same function. They're also all of the rooms that you're really going to need in order to complete your objectives more than anything else. These are the essential rooms inside of Nemesis. So hopefully you got all of the information that you needed, and I will see you guys in the next video.